Friend, we are at it again. My name is Becky if you are new, and this is Acre Homestead. We are going to be making in my kitchen today 5 Instant Pot dinners. I'm really excited to try these. I just got this cookbook. It's called the Step-by-Step Instant Pot Cookbook, and it's an official Instant Pot cookbook. The recipes all in here look really good. It took me a long time to pare it down to 5. And the cool thing about this cookbook is there's a picture for every recipe, and each step has a picture to go along with it. So if you're a visual person like me, that is amazing. I can link this cookbook down below. Let's get right into it. We're gonna start with the pasta carbonara. The first thing I'm gonna do is hit the saute button because we need to cook our bacon first. The recipe calls for pancetta, but I don't have pancetta, I have bacon. So you can substitute bacon for pancetta. Just know that bacon is smoked, so you're gonna get a little bit more of a smoky flavor than if you use pancetta. So we need 10 ounces of bacon. I'm going to slice this up into fine pieces. To the Instant Pot, we're gonna add a drizzle of olive oil and our pancetta, or bacon in this case. And we're gonna saute this until it gets nice and crispy. I have the Instant Pot on the saute mode, and that is how I'm going to crisp up this bacon. The 5 recipes we are making today are the spaghetti carbonara, smoky sausage white bean soup, which blows my mind, it is so delicious, chicken and dumplings with homemade dumplings, basil, shrimp, fried rice, and sausage and shells. I am blown away by all these recipes, and I'm excited to share them with you today. So while our bacon is cooking, we are going to mix up a 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese, 3 eggs, and salt and pepper. We're going to whisk this together, and then we're just going to set this aside until after our pasta is cooked. The cool thing about all these recipes is they are dump and go. We are going to cook everything in the Instant Pot, and so we don't have to dirty up another dish, which is always a beautiful thing. So this is how I like my bacon. If you like your bacon a little bit crispier, cook it longer. If you like it a little softer, cook it a little less long. But this is how I desired it, so I'm going to take it out of the Instant Pot, and I'm going to put in right away a 1/2 cup of onions. These are cut up onions that I had in my freezer, along with a tablespoon of garlic. I'm going to use the moisture from the onions and a 1/4 cup of white wine to deglaze the bottom of the Instant Pot. Once we've cooked the onions to our desired texture, I'm going to take a pound of spaghetti, break it in half, and layer this on the bottom of the Instant Pot. If you don't cook with white wine, skip the white wine and add an extra 1/4 cup of broth. So instead of 3 cups of broth, add 3 1/4 cups broth. I've also pre-measured out 1 1/2 cups of cream. Now that our pasta is nicely covered with the broth, we're going to add some butter. Now we're going to put the lid on, and we're going to cook this on high pressure for 8 minutes. Once this comes to pressure and counts down from 8 minutes, we are going to do a quick release, and then we can add the rest of the ingredients we've already prepped. The 8 minutes is counted down, so we're going to do the manual release. It smells incredible. So now it says to turn it off and put it on saute again. We need to add black pepper, our heavy cream, and our egg Parmesan mixture. I think before I add my egg mixture, I'm going to add the nutmeg so I can make sure I'm stirring while I add the egg mixture. Now we're supposed to stir and have this saute for 2 minutes. Now that our sauce has thickened up and we've cooked the eggs, we're gonna add bacon or your pancetta, depending on what you cooked. I'm gonna keep some set aside so we can top it with the bacon, and I cannot wait to give this a try. If that doesn't look delicious. I don't know what does. Let's give this a try. You could top it with more pepper and cheese if you want. I think I want to give it a taste test just the way it is. My mouth is watering. Talk about the perfect weeknight dinner. Most of those ingredients are things that we all keep on hand, except I guess the pancetta, but hence why I substituted bacon for pancetta, because I always have bacon in my freezer. I was able to make that substitution and it turned out so good. That is a winner. I will make that again and that will be part of my regular routine. Now let's get going on the next recipe. The next recipe we are going to be doing is the spicy sausage and white bean soup. I'm just going to add a little bit of olive oil to our Instant Pot on the saute mode. And I have some Cajun sausage here. The recipe says you can use whatever kind of sausage you want, whether it's kielbasa or just whatever pre-cooked kind of spicy-ish sausage you have on hand or you want to use. Now I am going to switch this recipe up just a tiny bit because we are going to puree part of this soup so that it's creamy and delicious and comforting. And the recipe says we puree some of the sausage. Well, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and sear the sausage, get some nice yummy color on it. We'll remove it and then we'll follow the recipe exactly how it says. Oh, that startled me. And then we will add the sausage back in, just like we did with the bacon. I'll add the sausage at the end. I'm gonna add our sausage carefully to our oil. I do have the Instant Pot on saute mode, and while the sausage is cooking, I'm going to prep some of the other ingredients we need. I do cut this recipe in half. This recipe says it serves 4 to 6 people, but when I was looking at the list of ingredients, I thought it could easily serve 8, and we didn't need that much soup, so I am cutting this in half. Once our sausage is beautifully browned the way I want, I'm going to go ahead and take a paper towel and I'm going to remove some of the grease. I leave a little bit behind because I'm going to use that to saute our onions, but I do want to get the sausage removed so that we can finish cooking the soup. So I'm going to add the equivalent of 1 onion diced. I'm going to add 2 cups or 1 small can of crushed tomatoes, salt and pepper, and 2 cups of ham broth. Now I do want to get all these brown bits into our soup because this is all delicious flavor I don't want to leave behind. And I was worried it was going to get a little too burnt or browned if I didn't use some of the broth moisture to help deglaze the pan. Normally I can do that with just the moisture from the onions, but I did need a little bit of help from the broth. Once my onions were sauteed, I added a puck of garlic and 3 bay leaves, and now I'm going to add 2 cups of ham broth, 2 cups of crushed tomatoes, and 1 small can of diced tomatoes. I have 2 cans of beans and 1 drained can of diced tomatoes. I'm going to season this with salt and pepper. And I think the secret ingredient is 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. Lid goes on. Manual for 4 minutes, and then we can do a quick release and finish up this recipe. The written recipe has you put your sausage in here and cook with it. The sausage is already fully cooked, and because I don't want to blend up part of the sausage, I do want to blend up part of the soup. I'm going to cook them separate. When this is done, we'll do a quick release, blend, add our sausage, and add 1 more ingredient. Oh my goodness. We need to fish out the bay leaves. I think I put 3 in there before we blend it with the immersion blender. I don't want to blend the whole thing, but I do want it a little bit creamier. That's probably good right there. Now we're going to add our sausage back in. And cheese. I'm going to leave a little extra cheese to put on the top. Stir this in and give it a try. I've never added cheese to a bean soup before, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's gonna add just a extra layer of yumminess. I'm gonna go ahead and top some with some cheese. Oh man, that is so good. I made some homemade ham broth because the recipe called for ham broth or chicken broth, and I had some ham. I had a ham in my freezer, so I just made up some broth, and that is so good. That is so good. I've never made a soup like this before. I'm gonna give some to Josh to try. Josh is working from home today, and he's trying every recipe, and then at the end we are going to rate them in order of how we like them. This one may have just topped the last one. I don't know. That's good. I'm gonna give this to him, come back, and we're gonna set up for the next recipe. Yet again, we are starting off our Instant Pot in the saute mode. I think this method where you saute everything first is helping to build the flavor. I have some carrots and onions I'm gonna get in, well, no, carrots and celery I'm gonna get in there, and now I'm gonna dice up these carrots. I'm gonna adjust this recipe just a little bit. It calls for a whole chicken. I don't have a whole chicken in my house, so if I did, I would use that because I think it would add really yummy flavor using the whole chicken. But I have some chicken thighs that I thawed out of the freezer, and we're gonna use those instead. And I have some homemade broth that we're gonna be using, so I don't think we're gonna miss out on too much flavor. But the first thing we have in here is our celery, onions, some butter, and now I'm going to chop up carrot. We're gonna get these cooking first. I cut this recipe in half as well, and I'm gonna share with you what the half recipe quantities are for this recipe. In the Instant Pot on the saute mode, I have 2 tablespoons of butter, a half an onion, 1.5 carrots. Now, my carrots were small from the garden, so I had a couple of them, and I chopped them up to my desired size, along with 1.5 ribs of celery. We're gonna add a garlic puck, 4 cups of chicken broth, 3 bay leaves, and it calls for cooking cherry. I don't have cooking cherry, but I had some white wine, so I'm gonna add a half a cup of white wine, a big garlic puck from the freezer, which is the equivalent of about probably 4 garlic cloves or so. I'm gonna add salt and pepper, some poultry seasoning, and that is the ingredients. Now we are gonna make some homemade dumplings. I am blown away by this recipe. We are able to get so much incredible flavor from the Instant Pot, and this is going to be another go-to recipe because the flavors are just fantastic. And I'm going to show you how to make the dumplings in just a minute. And instead of the whole chicken, I'm just going to add some chicken thighs. Lid on, vent closed. Manual for 10 minutes. Now we're gonna make the dumplings for our chicken and dumplings. In this bowl, I'm gonna add 1.25 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now we're gonna add a teaspoon of salt, and I have, oh, you know what I should do? Mix that together before I add 2 tablespoons of melted butter and a half a cup of warmed milk. It said to warm it in the microwave for 45 seconds. I'm gonna stir this together. And it said do not overmix, so just until combined. I've never made chicken and dumplings like this, so this is gonna be a fun test recipe to see how it goes. It does say we need to roll them out to no more than 1/8 of an inch onto a floured surface. So I just have my silicone mat here. And then I can finish kind of getting this dough in a ball when I work it. That was really easy. It said not to overwork it, so I don't want to knead it or anything, I don't think. Our soup base is almost done. It says it has 3 minutes left. That looks pretty good. Now I don't want to cut on my silicone mat, so what I'm going to do is grab my cutting board. I'm going to transfer my dumpling dough onto my cutting board. Probably could have rolled it out on my cutting board. And it says to take a pizza cutter and to do 2 inches by 1 inch. But I don't think it has to be exact. As I'm watching myself back do this, I realized I did not cut the dumpling recipe in half, even though I cut the chicken soup portion of this recipe in half, and I think it was a fantastic ratio. Our chicken is done. So now we're gonna fish out the chicken so we can shred the chicken. And I'm gonna grab the bay leaves while I'm at it. And then we're gonna hit the saute button on the Instant Pot because we need to cook our dumplings in this liquid. And I think I got both bay leaves. Nope, there's the second one. I'm gonna hit saute, and I have a cornstarch water mixture here. The quantities of cornstarch is 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch with a little bit of water mixed together. You wanna make sure it's cold water. We're gonna pour that into our broth base, and that is gonna thicken up our soup. I'm gonna stir it to make sure nothing's sticking. And then we're gonna cook these for 10 minutes on the saute mode. And while those are cooking, I think I'm gonna put the lid on. Not gonna close it or anything. I'm gonna dice my chicken up. This is where if you had a whole chicken, you would remove the bones and the skin from the chicken, but we just need to cut these because they're just chicken thighs. I did remove any excess fat before I put them in the Instant Pot. We're gonna add our chicken back to the chicken and dumplings. Along with 1/2 cup of cream. Our soup is done, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut the heat off. I'm just gonna unplug it. I'm excited to try this. It smells absolutely incredible. I can't believe how easy that was. That was so easy. Definitely save yourself a step if you don't use a whole chicken and have to pick the meat off the bone. These flavor combinations, celery, onions, carrots, and chicken, just scream fall to me. Those dumplings are tender. They're not gummy. They're perfect. That was so easy for such a hearty, delicious meal. I'm gonna go give Josh a try, and we're gonna get ready for our next recipe. The next recipe we're gonna make is a basil fried rice with shrimp. And I've got 2 cups of jasmine rice. I'm gonna measure out here. I'm gonna go wash this rice and then we will get it cooking. I'm excited to try this recipe because I like the way that this recipe is written and the steps to make sure we cook everything in the Instant Pot. So I'm gonna go wash this rice. Once the water ran clear, I'm gonna add 2 cups of water to our rice. I washed the rice until it ran clear, and now we're gonna put it into our Instant Pot with the lid on. We're gonna cook this on manual for 3 minutes, and then we're going to let it naturally release for 10 minutes. While this is cooking, we can prep the rest of the ingredients we need for this dinner. So I went ahead and sliced up a red pepper and a small red onion. The recipe calls for shallots, but I don't have shallots, I have red onion. So I'm gonna substitute that and use that instead. We need to scramble 3 eggs. Set that aside, and then I'm gonna finely sliver 2 jalapenos. My jalapenos from my garden are coming out so small, that's why I'm using 2. If they were a normal size jalapeno, I would only use one. And then we need to make a sauce to go on top. And I am going to use, instead of oyster sauce and fish sauce, because Josh doesn't like either of those ingredients, I've got some homemade plum sauce here. So I'm gonna substitute that for that. And then I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of soy sauce and some garlic chili sauce. We're gonna mix that together, and that's gonna be our sauce for the rice. I'm gonna give that a taste test real quick, just to make sure our sauce tastes good. Oh yeah, that's good. I'm glad that I'm not using fish sauce and oyster sauce. It's just not a flavor Josh really likes, and it's not my favorite either. But that plum sauce and the garlic chili sauce together, that's a winner combination. We need a bunch of basil for this recipe because it is a basil fried rice. So I'm out in the garden and I'm gonna collect a bunch of it. The rice is done, so we are gonna go ahead and put it into this bowl so that we can use the Instant Pot to cook our peppers and onions and shrimp and eggs. And it said we do not need to wash out the Instant Pot, so we're gonna go ahead and set the rice aside and hit saute. We're gonna put some oil in the bottom along with, this is olive oil. The recipe doesn't call for any sesame oil, but I like sesame oil, so I'm gonna put a little bit of that in the bottom too. We're gonna let that heat up, and then we're gonna add our peppers, onions, and jalapenos. I didn't realize the shrimp I purchased still has tails on them. So instead of cooking the vegetables, I'm gonna go ahead and cook the shrimp next so I can take them out of the pan and I can remove the tails, and then we can cook the vegetables. But if the tails were not on there, we would cook the vegetables first and then add the shrimp. I am going to go ahead and salt and pepper the shrimp though while they're in here. I just removed the shrimp so that I can take the tails off. So we need to move on to the next step. I'm gonna add a little bit more oil, both the olive oil and sesame oil. I still have it on saute, and we're gonna saute our vegetables. I washed up all the basil that I went to the garden and harvested. We're gonna saute this for a couple minutes. What I learned from making this recipe is that I really like the way that this recipe is written step by step. The thing about this type of recipe is you could really do whatever flavor combination you wanted, whatever you had on hand. If you didn't have any, chicken or meat or shrimp, leave that out and just add some eggs. Or, say you had a bunch of zucchini coming out of the garden, or you had broccoli that needed to be used up, use that instead of peppers and onions. The way that the final fried rice turned out, I'm surprised. The texture was so good. Normally when I make fried rice with leftover rice, just plain white rice that sat in the refrigerator overnight. And this turned out really well for being fresh rice. So this is really great. This made a very, very, very easy dinner. And I'm really excited that I kind of have this technique under my belt. And you could use whatever kind of, seasonings you wanted. You didn't need to use plum sauce. You could just use soy sauce. You could use coconut aminos. Use a bag of frozen mixed vegetables, soy sauce, and egg, and call that a recipe. So good, so easy. I'm just happy that I now know that you can cook the rice in the Instant Pot, remove the rice, add some oil, put it on saute, add your veggies, add the rice back in, and the texture is still really beautiful. So I have all the ingredients now in the Instant Pot cooked and mixed together. Let's give it a try. Normally I make fried rice when I have leftover rice, but it cooked up really well in the Instant Pot, and you could get super creative with the flavor profiles just depending on whatever random vegetables you have, whatever kind of protein you have. Leave the protein out altogether. And obviously I didn't follow the flavors exactly because I didn't use fish sauce or oyster sauce in this, but this is really good. I just had a piece of shrimp. I don't cook seafood very often, and that's a really nice treat. The final recipe today is sausage and shells. This one sounds so delicious. I'm really excited to give it a try. I'm gonna cut this recipe in half again as well. So we're gonna start with 1 pound of Italian sausage. We're gonna hit the saute mode on the Instant Pot. That's how we're starting all these recipes. And I'm gonna get this 1 pound of Italian sausage cooked, browned, and crumbled up. I didn't add any oil because I think there's gonna be enough oil from the sausage itself. So we're gonna get this cooked. While the sausage is cooking, I'm gonna measure out a 1/2 cup of white wine, a 1/4 cup of half and half of a white onion. We have about 5 ounces of frozen spinach, a handful of cherry tomatoes from the garden, a puck of garlic, and a 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. So once the sausage is fully cooked, I can add my vegetables to the saute pan, and we're gonna get all those cooked together. The recipe called for Italian seasoning. I don't have Italian seasoning, so I just threw in a handful of freeze-dried basil along with some salt and pepper. Once the tomatoes burst and the spinach is thawed, I'm gonna add a 1/2 box or 1/2 pound of shells to this, and then we will add the white wine. We're gonna let the white wine cook for just a minute. We are gonna cook these on high pressure for 6 minutes after we add our 1.5 cups of broth. I on accident added the full amount of broth, so this ends up coming out a little bit on the runnier side, but it still tastes super delicious. This was one of Josh's favorites. I will share with you his ranking after we're done. I'm gonna add a 1/2 of a block of Boursin cheese. It said you could substitute cream cheese if you wanted, along with a 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese and a 1/4 cup of cream. I think in my attempt to cut this recipe in half, I may have added too much liquid and not enough noodles. It's almost more like a soup, but I think it's still gonna taste really good instead of it being more like a pasta sauce. But it is time to give this a taste test. It smells really good. You can substitute the Boursin cheese with cream cheese, it said, but I had some in my fridge, and it's actually the first time I put 1/2 of it in there and then I've tasted it with a cracker. That stuff is so good. This is delicious. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with these flavors. The heartiness of the sausage, the cheese, a little bit of white wine, but not too much, some cherry tomatoes and spinach. It is a little bit more like a soup, but this is delicious. I'm gonna dish up Josh a little dish so he can taste this recipe, and we can rate them from our favorite to our least favorite. I think they all were really, really good, but I think I have a favorite and I think he might have a favorite, but he needs to try this one first. I've got the results in, and Josh ranked his from favorite to least favorite, but he said they all were really, really good. So his first one was the carbonara. Hard to go wrong with those flavors. He had a tie for second, which was the chicken and dumplings and the shell pasta. Then he said the bean soup and then the fried rice. Josh and I like shrimp, but it's not like our favorite, and that's probably why. I think if I had done a sausage basil fried rice, it probably would have ranked a little bit higher, but they all were super delicious. The way I probably would rank them would be the bean soup was probably number 1 for me, which is kind of odd. That's not something I super gravitate towards normally, and that's why I love doing things like this, because it branches me out of my comfort zone, and that was phenomenal. So I think the bean soup was probably number 1 for me, and then the carbonara, chicken and dumplings, the pasta and shells. Chicken and dumplings and pasta and shells probably tied. Josh and I like pasta and we like chicken and dumpling flavors. And then the fried rice was probably toward the bottom again, just because it had shrimp in it. I was trying to get myself out of, my comfort zone and cook with something that I don't cook with very often, and we really enjoyed it. But again, shrimp is not our absolute favorite. So this book is phenomenal. Like I said, I will link this down below if you want to kind of branch out and learn to cook some new recipes. There's about 10 other recipes that I have written down that I want to try. that just sound really good. It took me a while to narrow it down to these 5 recipes, so we might have to cook a few more recipes out of this cookbook. So friend, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being you. If you enjoyed this video, I can pop a couple of my other videos here you can go enjoy between now and my next upload. I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.